Oh, you think I was a freshman?
About to come up with the electricians in the room to help us out.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to convene the January 14th, 2025 Labor and Public Employees Committee meeting. The time is now 2:03. I'd like to start in the case of an emergency. We have two exits to the face of where I am and then one behind me. At this time, I would like to first start with remarks by the chairs and ranking members. Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Chairman Sanchez. It's exciting to be here for the first meeting where we have an agenda with bills to work on, and I'm anxious to get going. So I look forward to the meeting today.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Delighted to return as ranking senator for the Republicans on the Labor Committee. If I can actually spit that out without messing up. Excited for, to tackle the same issues I think that we have perennially discussed, and hopefully we'll see some new items as well. I understand that this is our first agenda of the year, and it looks to me that the majority of these items are things that we've debated in recent years. So I'm just hopeful that we're going to actually tackle some additional items as well, and maybe some items that are more interesting to folks on this side of the room. I have a housing committee meeting also at 2:30, so I'm going to be bouncing out at that time if the meeting happens to last that long. I just wanted to put that on the record currently, so no one thinks I'm just taking off in the middle of the meeting. I've been tempted to do that before, but I've managed to sit here calmly and discuss these items. I'll turn it over to Representative Weir, our House ranking member, so he can comment as well. But I just want to say that welcome to our two new House Republicans, and welcome to the new members on the Democrat side as well.
Mr. Chair, are you okay that the ranking member just handed me over the microphone? I just want to make sure.
I'm okay with that. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Senator Sampson, for the honor. Happy to be back discussing many of the items. I do, as the senator pointed out, some old stuff on here, but there's also a couple new items. I'm looking forward to learning a little bit more about what we have in store for us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Look forward to working with everyone, and congratulations to all. We're going to move on to concepts to be raised. Our first concept is an act concerning state marshal health benefits. I'd like to request a motion to raise this concept.
So seconded.
So moved by Representative Wilson, seconded by Ann Hughes. Representative Hughes. This bill is returning from last year, as Senator Sampson alluded to, and the intention is providing health benefits for state marshals. I believe this will be a roll call vote if there aren't any other questions or concerns. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yeah. I just want to, I'm going to support the first item on the agenda. I just want to put on the record, as we often do, that, an affirmative vote on a concept is just an agreement that we should have a hearing on the subject, not a necessarily support for the final measure. As far as whether or not we're going to do voice votes or roll calls, I don't know. I think it's a relatively short agenda, and I think there are a number of items that there may be opposition to. I think it's probably better off that we roll call each one. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Kushner.
I'm happy to hear that you'll be supporting it at this point. I do want to point out this bill last year we had a lot of discussion about, and there was very good testimony, and it was a bipartisan bill, and that doesn't happen real often in our committee, but I hope we'll get there again this year. We heard great testimony from people who work for the state of Connecticut, and some of their families are on Husky, and it seems like there ought to be a way to figure out that we can do this reasonable cost to the state, or little cost to the state. It's not a large group of employees, but also, for those that are working, really truly working full time, we should be providing some health benefits. So I know we haven't heard the testimony yet. I'm guessing it hasn't changed a lot from last time, but I'm looking forward to it, particularly because it's always good when we have a bill that we can work on together.
Any other questions? Representative Master-Francesco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I just had a quick question just for understanding. You had mentioned that this bill was proposed last year, was voted out on a bipartisan basis, which is, I'm sure it's great because as I understand, there's probably not a lot of that going on in this committee. I'm just curious, this for the state marshals, are they under the CBAC agreement? And when we make changes for their health care, is that through negotiations for contract negotiations?
We can certainly have conversations during the public hearing to get that level of detail, but my understanding is because they're per diem employees, they don't receive health care.
Okay, thank you. I wanted clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any other questions? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, will you call the roll?
A roll call vote has been requested and a motion duly made and seconded on agenda item 1, an act concerning state marshals' health benefits. Senator Kushner,
Yes.
Representative Sanchez,
Yes.
Senator Cabrera, Representative Wilson,
Representative Wilson votes yes.
Senator Sampson,
Sampson is yes.
Representative Weir,
Yes.
Representative Hall, Representative Hughes,
Yes.
Senator Lesser,
Senator Lesser votes yes.
Representative Canino,
Canino, yes.
Representative Gauthier,
Representative Gauthier, yes.
Representative Master-Francesco,
Yes.
Representative Shake.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Votes will be held open. Our next concept is an act concerning the number of wage and hour investigators at the Labor Department. I'd like to request a motion to raise this concept. So moved by Representative Wilson, seconded by Representative Hughes. This bill, again, is returning from last year where it was a bipartisan effort to increase the total number of wage and hour investigators at the Department of Labor. Questions? Representative Weir?
So obviously that is the, maybe I misheard, but obviously you read the title, but can you just give a brief description? If I missed it, I apologize.
I can read it again. This bill was returning from last year. This was a bipartisan effort, and the effort was to increase the total number of wage and hour investigators for the Department of Labor.
Thank you.
No problem. Representative Canino.
Do we have a number on how many of these investigators that we currently have in the state?
I do not in front of me, but we can get you that information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Kushner.
Hi, again, I think what we heard testimony on last year, and I'm sure there'll be an opportunity to hear again from the public. There were a number of people who had claims that they had raised for wage and hour claims that, where there were violations of the state laws, and it was taking months and months and months and years in some cases. And there's been some press about it this summer, so I'm pretty sure we're going to hear from people again. But I think we have our laws in place to be enforced, and it is unfortunate that we didn't have enough people to really make it timely. So that was the thinking behind this. There will be definitely a fiscal note on it, and we know that last year it didn't make it through because of the fiscal note, but it did have good bipartisan support because I think we all understand that it's something important to address. So hopefully this year we can move it a little further.
Any further questions? Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
A roll call vote has been requested and a motion duly made and seconded on agenda item 2, an act concerning the number of wage and hour investigators at the Labor Department. The motion is to raise this concept. Senator Kushner,
Yes.
Representative Sanchez,
Yes.
Senator Cabrera, Representative Wilson,
Yes.
Senator Sampson,
Sampson is yes.
Representative Weir,
Yes.
Representative Hall, Representative Hughes.
Yes.
Senator Lesser,
Yes.
Representative Canino,
Yes.
Representative Gauthier,
Yes.
Representative Master Francesco,
Yes.
Representative Shake.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Votes will be held open. The next concept that we have is an act concerning unemployment benefits. I'd like to request a motion to raise this concept.
So moved.
Moved-
Seconded.
Moved by Representative Wilson, seconded by Representative Hughes. Questions? Representative Master Francesco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you elaborate a little bit more on this bill? All it just says is an act about unemployment benefits. That's it.
Thank you, Representative. Yes, happy to. So this bill is actually also going to be returning from last year. The intention is to provide striking workers access to unemployment after strikes after a certain duration of time. Last year's bill generally made striking workers eligible for unemployment benefits after they have been on strike for 14 consecutive days.
Thank you. And I'm just curious, so this bill was a bill from last year, but yet we're raising it as a concept. Is it really not a concept? Because the language, I'm assuming, is already drafted from last year?
So I do believe it's going to be a concept, and through this committee process, we will address the language as we go through the committee process and public hearings.
Thank you. And do you anticipate the language to be different than the bill that was proposed last year?
It's pretty,
I'm not sure. Senator Kushner?
I don't think we know yet.
Is there something, thank you. Is there something different that you would like to do this year about this bill or address it or put some different type of language in here as opposed to the one from last year? I mean, it's clear, right, that I'm assuming the bill is drafted. There is an idea or that somebody wants to do. So, maybe last year, the bill, you had one language and somebody said, gee, I think when we draft the bill this year, should include this. So I'm just curious, what is different from this bill that would be from last year? I would assume the committee would know because they're raising it as a concept.
Thank you, Representative. I think what you said is exactly right. I think during the public hearing, someone may suggest something that we might want to consider. Or we may very well keep the language that we have from last year. But going through that process, there might be some adjustments that would be made.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Comments? Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'm very sympathetic to the questions that Representative Master Francesco was just asking. It's a frustration that I've had for a long time about the notion of raising concepts. People often say, well, it's just a concept, you should be able to support it. But sometimes those concepts are pretty clearly defined. In fact, I was just talking in our caucus about the first concept that I think I ever opposed, which was in the Judiciary Committee maybe a decade ago about repealing the death penalty. And it's like, well, it's real easy to say, well, it's just a concept. We should have a hearing. But, sometimes if it is a specific point of, ideological difference, you might have a tough time even voting just to have a hearing on the subject. And that's kind of how I feel about some of the items on this agenda. I'm very pleased to have been able to support the first two items, and I think I will support them going forward. But that may be the last time I'm going to have a positive record in the Labor Committee this year, and that's unfortunate. So I'm going to keep hammering away that I think we really should make this more of a bipartisan committee. There are definitely good ideas coming from the minority, and hopefully we will see them in future meetings. The bill that's concept that is before us about the unemployment benefits for striking workers, I just have a fundamental philosophical problem with it, and that's boils down to the fact that unemployment benefits are designed for a very specific purpose. And if you go on the Department of Labor website and you look at what unemployment is for, it says very clearly to be eligible, you need three things. You need to be unemployed through circumstances that are not your own fault. You need to be able to work, and you need to be looking for work. And the fact of the matter is that if you're going on strike voluntarily and you are refusing to work and you are not looking for work, you're in violation of all three structural concepts that define what unemployment compensation insurance is for. And for me, I don't think that it's appropriate to use that system, which is designed to take care of people that might be in difficult circumstances because they lost their job, not of their own volition, and they need to pay their bills, and use that as a mechanism to subsidize effectively a labor dispute and give an advantage to one side of the argument. And that's just, for me, it stands out as something that is an improper role of the state government. So I'll be opposing that today, and I'll be opposing it going forward, I imagine, unless there are some significant changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Kushner.
I did recognize when we put the agenda together that we were starting off on the right foot, but I also recognized that it was probably the first two bills that would be bipartisan. But, you know, I appreciate your comments, Senator Sampson. I know that this is a bill we've talked about a lot in the past, and I'm sure after the public hearing and when we get into our committee meetings to JF bills, we'll have much greater discussion about this. But obviously, this is something that's very important to me and to the advocates that have put it forward. And you will see it again on the agenda. So maybe I'll reserve my comments for the last item on the agenda today. Thank you.
Representative Canino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I share many of the similar concerns to my colleague, Senator Sampson. You know, one thing I hear time and time again in my district from my constituents, from the people who are trying to enterprise and create businesses in this state, is that the state of Connecticut has a heavy hand at times, that there are many regulations that come down that make it difficult to do business in this state. And I have a big concern that this concept could be tipping the scale in favor of one side in a private labor dispute between two private entities that are consensually involved in that labor transaction. So I will be joining my colleague, Senator Sampson, in voting no on this, but I'm interested in engaging in the discussion going forward.
Thank you, Representative. Any further comments or questions? Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
A roll call vote has been requested and a motion duly made and seconded on agenda item 3, an act concerning unemployment benefits. The vote is to raise this as a concept. Senator Kushner,
Yes.
Representative Sanchez,
Yes.
Senator Cabrera, Representative Wilson,
Yes.
Senator Sampson,
Sampson is no.
Representative Weir,
No.
Representative Hall, Representative Hughes.
Yes.
Senator Lesser, Representative Canino,
No.
Representative Gauthier,
Yes.
Representative Master Francesco,
No.
Representative Shake.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The votes will be held open. Next up, we have an act clarifying that cannabis workers will be paid the full minimum wage. I'd like to request a motion to raise this concept.
So moved.
So moved by Representative Wilson,
Seconded.
seconded by Representative Hughes. This bill is a new concept, which aims to ensure that cannabis workers must be paid the full minimum wage. Questions? Representative Weir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for the record, obviously we discussed this last week in screening. And the question I had at the time was how widespread is this? Do we have any more information this week that we didn't have last week? What's driving this request?
Thank you.
Senator
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Sanchez. We know that this occurred at least in one instance that went to the Department of Labor. And I assume during the public hearing, we'll get information if there's been additional confusion about this. What we do know is that the cannabis employers there isn't anyone who's applied through all the mechanisms we have in place to be an employer that pays tipped wages. But we know from some workers that they were paid tipped wages. So it just seems like a good step to take to clarify the statute so that there's no confusion about it.
Okay, I think I'm going to reserve my judgment. I'm just concerned that if we had one instance, I guess, as you say, we'll find out through the public hearing. But my concern is that if we're going to potentially create a piece of legislation that involved one instance that was kind of solved and resolved with the Department of Labor, that I want to be careful that we're not overstepping here and causing something that that's unnecessary. So I'll reserve judgment on that, but thank you for the explanation.
Any further questions? Comment? Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
A roll call vote has been requested and a motion duly made and seconded on agenda item 4, an act clarifying that cannabis workers must be paid the full minimum wage. The vote is to raise this as a concept. Senator Kushner,
Yes.
Representative Sanchez.
Yes.
Senator Cabrera, Representative Wilson,
Yes.
Senator Sampson,
Sampson is yes.
Representative Weir,
Yes.
Representative Hall, Representative Hughes,
Yes.
Senator Lesser, Representative Canino,
Yes.
Representative Gauthier,
Yes.
Representative Mastrofrancesco,
Yes.
Representative Shake.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Votes will be held open. Next, we have an act making changes to the Connecticut Retirement Security Program statutes. I'd like to request a motion to raise the concept.
So moved.
Seconded.
So moved by Representative Wilson, seconded by Representative Hughes. This bill is a returning bill from last year and the year prior, with the goal of making a series of changes that we believe will strengthen the CT Retirement Security Program. Questions? Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I know you just mentioned that this is going to be a repeat of last year's bill, and certainly, you know, barring any new information that comes up during our hearing and so forth, I understand you might want to make some adjustments. But just based on that information, I can't support the proposed concept. The bill that came before us in the last cycle increased the contribution rate dramatically. I have the same initial concern I always had, which is that, you know, this program really should be an opt-in type program instead of being mandated on the employees and employers of the state of Connecticut. I know that there was a provision to have an increase in the contribution rate that happens automatically over time. You know, and the fact of the matter is that I think that there's a lot of employees in the state that to this day don't even know that this money is being taken out of their pay, much like paid family medical leave. I talk to people all the time. They have no idea that that's actually being taken out of their paycheck. Excuse me. But one of the biggest issues I had with the bill last year, and I suspect it'll be in there again, is this empowering of the comptroller to engage in agreements with other states and so forth. Sorry, not sick, just very dry in here. So, I mean, to me, that's a big issue. I know that there were also increases in penalties for employers, and I thought that was very one-sided. And in fact, that the penalties on employers were much more than the penalty on someone who might abuse the system. So, you know, just those reasons, and I'm certain there are others that I have, you know, are not top of mind. But for those reasons, I'm not going to support the concept today, and I will look forward to a future debate on the subject, unless of course, it happens to fail as a motion. Thank you.
Senator Kushner. Sure. Senator Kushner.
Again, we'll have an opportunity to get into great detail about the proposed bill once it's drafted and we have the public hearing. And I do think there could potentially be some changes from last time. I don't think we've determined that yet, but I think in essence, the concept will be the same. And, you know, there are workers in our state who don't have access to, you know, direct access to these programs, to savings programs, retirement savings programs. And this is a great help to those workers. And I think something we want to encourage from the state. So, you know, I know I liked the bill last year, and I hope we get it all the way to the finish line this year.
Representative Weir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know we discussed this in committee quite a bit last year, and you and I both spent a couple hours on the House floor discussing it. That was just the two of us. But at any rate, you know, I'm hopeful that this bill, as it's being taken up, and I'm assuming it's going to go through today, that a lot of the comments that were made and the discussions that were had are taken to heart. And perhaps, again, the fact is, you've got employees by the hundreds, very high opt-out rate, by the way, because just so you know, this program automatically enrolls employees without their knowledge. And so if there's some consideration for an opt-in, I do agree that putting money aside is a great idea. It's a great way to build wealth over time, that you put a little bit away today, and 20, 30 years from now, that's worth quite a bit when you're not touching it. I think that's a great concept. And for those small businesses that don't offer a retirement plan, having those employees have access to a plan, I think is also a great idea, where you pick up those people who don't have access to it. The fact that my huge objection is the fact that it's an opt-out. So a lot of times the employees are, they're enrolled without their knowledge. They're put into a plan that they didn't choose, and there's a contribution rate that's chosen by the comptroller. So I just, for those of you out there who were not familiar with the bill, that's how it came last year. And so while I agree wholeheartedly that saving money today for tomorrow is going to be a great way to reach a healthy retirement, perhaps a comfortable one, I think a lot of work needs to be done, and I'm hoping that you'll consider my input, that and I'll speak for myself, not for those of my colleagues, but an opt-in provision is going to go a long way towards getting me to an area where this is palatable, and also removing a lot of the burdens on the employers, where they're mandated to turn over their census to the comptroller. That's a burden on a small employer. And better communication and maybe education of the employees as to these benefits that are available to them without a mandate, without penalties, without an opt-out provision. So I think if the committee, if the people who are drafting this take those suggestions to heart, maybe this is something that down the road I can get behind, recognizing that it's a great concept to be putting money away for tomorrow. So today, if we're talking about last year's knowledge, I'm a no. Or last year's language, I should say, I'm a no. But I'll look forward to seeing revised language in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any further questions or comments? Representative Canino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is this Connecticut Retirement Security Program a voluntary program for Connecticut employers to provide?
Representative, Senator Kushner. I'm sorry. I don't want to do it.
My CT Savings Program is a program that's been set up by the state for any employer who does not offer a pension or a retirement program for its employees.
And I read the bill from last year contained certain fines for employers who are non-compliant. My concern is, an employer is trying to do the right things, trying to offer, some benefits for their employees. There's a whole host of regulations involved with this, and they get slapped on the wrist with a significant fine for making a mistake. Do we foresee anything in this concept that would create, once it becomes a bill, that would create fines, or if there are fines, if there are warnings before a fine is levied, just to, protect that employer who's just trying to do the right thing?
I'm sure we'll have testimony on that. I do remember from previous testimony that the comptroller's office is very generous in allowing employers time to comply, because the goal here isn't to gather fines, but it is to make sure that people are in compliance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any further questions? Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
A roll call vote has been requested and a motion duly made and seconded on agenda item 5, an act making changes to the Connecticut Retirement Security Program statutes. The motion is to raise this as a concept. Senator Kushner.
Yes.
Representative Sanchez.
Yes.
Senator Cabrera, Representative Wilson.
Yes.
Senator Sampson, Representative Weir.
Weir is no.
Representative Hall, Representative Hughes.
Yes.
Senator Lesser. Representative Canino.
No.
Representative Gauthier.
Yes.
Representative Mastro Francesco.
No.
Representative Shake.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Votes will be held open. Next, we have an act concerning the protection of warehouse workers in this state. I'd like to request a motion to raise this concept.
So moved.
So moved
Second.
by Representative Wilson,
Second.
seconded by Representative Ghazi. So the protection of warehouse workers is a bill that's returning from last year with the intent of protecting warehouse workers from unreasonable quotas. A little bit about that was the bill limited the extent to which certain warehouse distribution centers can require their employees to meet production quotas. Questions or concerns? Comment. Representative Weir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, barring, we'll look forward to the final language on the bill, but generally speaking, this was targeted at, obviously warehouses, right? So quotas in another environment might be considered okay, but in a warehouse, this was targeting warehouse of a certain size. So I think when you start talking about warehousing, large scale, some of the large, maybe one of the largest warehousers in the state, if not the country, we're looking to target one company, and that really doesn't sit well with me. So, all for worker safety, all for worker productivity, all for worker satisfaction. But when we are kind of honing in on one company, that doesn't sit well with me. So we will, I'll be a no today, looking forward to language that maybe opens this up and treats everybody equally, because I don't think there's anything wrong with having a productivity expectation when those packages arrive at our front door. Nobody in this room is thinking about warehouse protections or productivity. Everybody wants their packages. And so I think if we're honing in and hamstringing and micromanaging a company and what their expectations are of their employers, I think that's a gross overstep of our authority here. We'll leave it at that, but thank you for indulging me.
Thank you, Representative Weir. Representative Canino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I share the concerns of my ranking member in that when an individual is hired for a warehouse job and they're told that they might have a quota, or they're told what the conditions of that job might be, that is a private transaction between that employee and the employer, and they are free to terminate that agreement at any time. I do not believe that it is the right thing to do for the state to come in and again tip those scales and say a business cannot engage in that consensual type of agreement. So I will also be voting no today, but look forward to further conversations on this.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Master Francesca.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will go back to what I was saying earlier about this as being a concept. What do we anticipate that will be different from the bill that we plan on drafting this year as opposed to the one that was last year? Do we know?
Senator Kushner.
I don't think we know entirely. I think we'll be looking at that language as we sit with LCO in the drafting of it. And I think we will, reflect back on previous debates and see if there's anything we want to modify. But we have not had that conversation yet with LCO. And when we do, it may be there'll be something that comes up, but it could look very much or exactly like last year's bill. We just don't know yet.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and that's why, again, with the concept, to me, it's not a concept if there's already a bill from previously. And that's why I just don't understand why there's just not a proposed bill today with the language so we can see it, maybe just ask some questions. It still has to go to a public hearing, right? And it still has to be, and then at that point, it could be changed. So I was just curious to see what's different between this and what you proposed last year, because the bill that was proposed last year did get voted out of committee. So it was fine with the committee members last year. I was wondering, after that bill was passed out of committee, did something change that would now make this year a bill be a concept and not a proposed bill for you?
Senator Kushner.
There's always, after a bill passes out of committee, there's a lot of conversation when it gets voted on in the chamber, and this did get voted on in the Senate. It did pass out of the Senate. And honestly, I don't remember if that was this year, 24 or 23, but it was one of those 2 years that it got voted out of the Senate. And in those conversations, there's always a lot of back and forth, much debate on the floor. as well as conversations that take place. And so I think before we respond and say it's going to look exactly like last time, we need a opportunity to reflect. We went into session on January 8th, and it hasn't been very long since that happened. And but I'm sure before we get too far in this process, we'll have language for you to all look at.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions. I will not be supporting this bill today because I don't even agree with the concept, let alone what the language is. So I'll be a no today. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any further questions or comments? Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
A roll call vote has been requested and a motion duly made and seconded on agenda item 6, an act concerning the protection of warehouse workers in the state. The motion is to raise this as a concept. Senator Kushner,
Yes.
Representative Sanchez,
Yes.
Senator Cabrera,
Yes.
Representative Wilson,
Yes.
Senator Sampson,
Sampson is no.
Representative Weir,
Weir's no.
Representative Hall, Representative Hughes.
Yes.
Senator Lesser,
Senator Lesser, yes.
Representative Canino,
No.
Representative Gauthier,
Yes.
Representative Mastro Francesco,
No.
Representative Shake.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Votes will be held open. Next, we have an act concerning revisions to the firefighters cancer relief fund. I'd like to request a motion to raise this concept.
So moved.
So moved. Second. So moved by Senator Kushner and seconded by Representative Shake. So this bill is a new concept intended to make some changes to the firefighters cancer relief fund with the hope of clarifying and improving it. Any questions or comments? Senator Kushner.
Thank you. I don't usually jump out front, and I apologize, Representative Canino, but as I think folks on the committee know, this is a bill that we worked on for several years, and ultimately were successful in setting up a cancer relief fund for firefighters. And the firefighters had direct involvement in making sure that we understood what was needed, and that we captured and created a statute that would really assist our, the people we call heroes, deservedly so, and the struggles they were facing from the chemicals that they are exposed to when fighting fires. And so I know that we were successful. I mean, there's good news and there's bad news. The bad news is that another firefighter contracted cancer and did apply for funds from the Cancer Relief Fund. And I believe there's now been someone who has qualified for relief from the fund as it was intended. But we also know that there were lots of complications in the application process itself. And we want to take guidance from the firefighters and municipalities about clarifying the statute. So we're certain that people have access to the funds that we set aside. There could be other, I think this is a great conversation to have with our firefighter community. And there could be additional adjustments that we determine that we need to make. But clearly our goal here is to make sure that as a state and as a society, we're taking care of the people who protect us.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Canino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'd just like to echo some of the words from the good Senate Chair that these are our heroes that serve our communities, and they deserve to be taken care of when they get these cancers that are very provably related to the job of firefighting. I've had a significant amount of firefighters come to me and tell me, the difficulty they've had in this process of receiving some of these benefits. And one quick question. So are there two buckets that someone can go to when they are a firefighter and they develop one of these cancers? Am I mistaken that there's this relief fund and then they can also submit a workers' comp claim?
Senator Kushner.
That is accurate. They can apply for workers' comp. It's a much more difficult process to get workers' comp because of the requirements that we put as a state on our workers' comp process. And the idea here was it is not always easy to prove that this is a workplace injury. Even though we know there's a relationship, it's very hard to prove where you get cancer. And so the idea behind the relief fund is that in certain cases, we want to make sure people have access to the same benefits that they would have received through workers' comp, and it's a much smoother process. We intended it to be a much smoother process, and that's what we're here to do this year, is to look at it and see if, in fact, what we intended to do actually happened. But they are not entitled, no one is entitled to receive benefits from both places. So there's no stacking of benefits in that way.
Mhm. No, I'm glad to hear that. And
Representative Canino?
sorry,
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
freshman.
No.
Yes. Like I said before, these individuals, they work their entire careers, and if we're making a bucket of money like this available for them, which I think is absolutely the right thing to do, I'm definitely interested in making it easier for them to get that. I know we created a rebuttable presumption under workman's comp. Is that correct?
Senator Kushner.
Not under workers' comp. I
Okay.
mean, these are good questions to ask the
Yes.
people who testify.
Okay.
I am not workman's comp or workers' comp expert, neither am I a firefighter, but there are lots of experts that will be able to answer these questions in our public hearing.
Thank you. Oh,
Thank you, Representative. Thank you, Senator Kushner. Representative Canino?
thank you. And yes, I just get a little bit excited about this issue because it's so important for the people that I represent. So appreciate it and look forward to working with you on this.
Thank you. Any other further questions, comments, concerns? Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
A roll call vote has been requested and a motion duly made and seconded on agenda item 7, an act concerning revisions to the firefighters cancer relief fund. The motion is to raise this concept. Senator Kushner,
Yes.
Representative Sanchez.
Yes.
Senator Cabrera,
Yes.
Representative Wilson,
Yes.
Senator Sampson,
Sampson is yes.
Representative Weir,
Weirs, yes.
Representative Hall, Representative Hughes,
Yes.
Senator Lesser,
Yes.
Representative Canino,
Yes.
Representative Gauthier. Yes. Representative Mastro Francesco,
Yes.
Representative Shake.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Votes will be held open. Next, we will move on to proposed bills to be drafted. Proposed SB 8, an act concerning protections for workers and enhancement to workers' rights. I'd like to request a motion to draft this proposed bill as a committee bill.
So moved?
So moved by Senator Kushner,
I'll second.
seconded by Representative Shake. This bill includes two concepts: the protection of warehouse workers and providing striking workers with access to unemployment. Questions? Concerns? Senator Kushner.
Thank you. I did want to reserve some of my comments around this proposed bill, Senate Bill number 8. Obviously, it overlaps two other bills that are standalone bills that we voted on today in terms of protecting warehouse workers' rights and providing unemployment benefits for striking workers. I do want to underscore that this is a priority bill. It's a caucus bill for the Senate Democrats and a priority bill of Senator Looney and our caucus. While it says this bill includes two concepts, those two concepts were written into the proposal. But I do want to point out that it also includes enhancements to workers' rights that could, when we draft the bill, could go beyond these two particular issues. I do strongly believe that the warehouse workers bill and the aspect of this is really critical for us to pass in the state. There's been a lot of evidence of workplace injuries, and we do as a state have a responsibility for workers' health and safety, and we take that responsibility very seriously. And in many, many industries, there are regulations and statutes that require employers to adhere to production and other circumstances that make sure that we're ensuring the safety of those workers. And in fact, there have been reports here in Connecticut that the injury rate where these practices of quotas have been employed most recently, that those injury rates are extremely high, and it is time to do something about it. There's been a federal report that came out recently in Congress, but We know that this has been going on for several years. You know, I know there has been concern raised, and we heard it here today, about this being a bill that targets one company. There's good news and bad news on that front. The good news is that you no longer have that argument, because we're hearing that other employers are now starting to use the same quota system that we have had testified about previously in this committee. We haven't heard from those workers yet, but I did get notified that in state there's another warehousing distribution center that's using the same methodology of quotas. And it's not so much whether or not you can have a quota, it's how that quota should be managed. And I think that's where this bill is very important to that worker population. So we know the turnover rate is extremely, extremely high. In the testimony that we heard from the National Institute that looks at turnover rates, and we want jobs in Connecticut that are good and safe for our workforce. And so I think this is a priority, as I mentioned, of Senator Looney, of our caucus, and it goes hand in hand with making sure that Connecticut workforce has its rights protected. And the other aspect of this that you will see as part of Senate Bill 8 is unemployment for striking workers. And it's something that we feel is critically important to leveling the playing field and giving workers the opportunity to exercise their rights that they have under federal law, instead of being hamstrung by whether or not they can survive or whether or not they'll be starved out if they choose to exercise those rights. And so I think these are really important. It's a really important piece of legislation, and I look forward to the public debate on it and the committee debate on it, as well as the public testimony that we'll hear during the hearing process. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So interesting that we actually touched on both of the concepts that are included in this proposed bill as concepts in the same agenda. And I imagine the purpose of that is to make sure that there are multiple vehicles to ensure that these items move forward, maybe in both chambers. I'm not sure. Maybe the one of the chairmen can speak to that. I'll just say a couple of words about this and then get to what is my main point. And certainly we will debate this bill at some length when it does come forward. But to me, it's a frustration because we're talking about a employment situation that is voluntary. You know, no one's being forced to work at any of these particular facilities. I'm as sympathetic as anyone to making sure that people are safe on the job and that there are protections in place. I mean, we have a system for that. You know, we have OSHA, we have, our, court system that creates civil liability for employers that, create dangerous work environments. I mean, there are a lot of mechanisms to address this issue already. And what's frustrating for me is to take something which is very, very clearly not a protection for workers, but rather a way to interfere with a private contractual voluntary agreement to put one side at a disadvantage over another in what should be purely a voluntary determination of whether to participate by all parties involved. So that's frustrating. And it speaks to the repeated disrespect that this committee has for private contracts in employment. Those private contracts are the basis of what it means to be a free citizen. And for me, it's frustrating to see the inability for people to engage in commerce of their own volition without having the government come along to put weight on the scale on one side or the other. Not to mention the fact that this is an extremely anti-business measure. We all know that it's aimed primarily at Amazon and potentially at other similar types of operations that have large warehouse facilities. And if I remember correctly, the bill in the past was for businesses with a minimum number of employees, maybe it was 100 employees, something like that. Yeah, again, I mean, to me, that's a temporary situation. We witnessed, with paid sick days, it was 50 employees or more. Now it's one or more. This type of thing is, dangerous to Connecticut's fiscal future. Our economic future depends on what people think of Connecticut and doing business here. And when you put out proposals like this, effectively telling the Amazons of the world, don't come to Connecticut. We don't really want you here. You can go do your business somewhere else. When there are citizens, our constituents, who are willing to work there under those terms. They have a right to work there if they choose, and they have a right to choose a different avenue of employment. The idea that we have to stand in their way, to me, is frustrating. That's not how we do things in America, in my view. And the reason why I'm bringing all this up is because it's really a premise to what my issue is today. We'll certainly debate this bill in the future, but my issue today is the title. The title says an act concerning protections for workers and enhancements to workers' rights. I don't want to get down on the attorneys that draft these bills. I know they work very hard to try and come up with objective titles and make sure that they are not putting undue influence in the way they're worded. But I oppose this bill. I'm going to oppose this concept today, and I'm being asked to vote against enhancing workers' rights effectively because of the title. And that's just not fair, because this bill doesn't enhance workers' rights in my view. This bill is an impediment to commerce. It is going to hurt the potential for workers to have jobs, period. And I believe that's a right just as much as the right to have a specific quota managed in a certain way that the Labor Committee deems appropriate. And I just would hope that the LCO folks take a look at this and put together a more objective title for this proposal going forward, because I don't believe it encompasses protections for workers. I believe it should more aptly be titled an act interfering with a private contract between willing participants in an employment agreement, and interfering with the rights of workers to have job opportunities by chasing away potential employers. That's the way I view the bill. And that's just as much an appropriate view as those that the chairs possess. And the title should be reflective of what the bill does objectively, and not weight it with any type of language that might say that it's beneficial or otherwise to vote one way or another on it. And again, I'm frustrated that I'm going to vote against a bill that is entitled Protections for Workers, implying that I'm voting against protections for workers and implying that I'm voting against enhancements to workers' rights. That's just not right. I shouldn't have to do that. But the substance of the proposal is such that I am going to vote no. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Sampson. Thank you, Senator Sampson. Representative Gothier.
I just wanted to very briefly say I'm very happy and proud to support this legislation, and very glad that it is priority legislation this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any other questions or comments? Representative Weir.
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Chair. And seeing this come up last year, I share my colleagues' concerns over the title. It's misleading at best. I think one of the things we'll discuss in great detail when the language does come out is how this is going to do anything to protect safety for workers, enhance their rights over existing protections. I think we're going to really have to dive into the specifics of those two concepts, how they go together in one bill. And I think the fact, this being a priority to me is a huge concern as someone who thinks we should be hands-off, or more hands-off certainly than we are. By many, almost every economic indicator, we're at the bottom of the list. As Senator Sampson pointed out, we are not rolling out the welcome mat to new businesses through legislation or even discussing things like this. What we're doing is inhibiting and sending a warning to companies to try to invest their capital elsewhere. And for whatever reason, I don't know, people don't travel, they don't look at what's going on in other states and how other states are thriving and who other states survived the big recession, 2008, 2009, bounced back. Connecticut took a decade or more just to get back to those levels. Other states bounced back from COVID much quicker than we did based on our policies. And it's really concerning to me that this is our priority in putting out something like this. So definitely worth a discussion. Be voting no today, of course, based on, just for many of the reasons that were brought up before. But I think we got to get our heads on straight if we're going to try to compete. As I stated in the opening day, I don't ever foresee Connecticut being a number one on the economic scale in my lifetime, but languishing around 46 and 47, I'm kind of tired of it. And I would like to see us employ tried and true concepts that work, where employees thrive, employers thrive. This legislature knows its spot, which is not interfering in those agreements and those relationships. So I think we'll be pointing out that as the session proceeds. And thank you for indulging me.
Thank you, Representative Weir. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
A roll call vote has been requested. Motion duly made and seconded on proposed Senate Bill 8, an act concerning protections for workers and enhancements to workers' rights. The motion is to draft this as a committee bill. Senator Kushner,
Yes.
Representative Sanchez,
Yes.
Senator Cabrera,
Senator Cabrera votes yes.
Representative Wilson,
Yes.
Senator Sampson,
Sampson is no.
Representative Weir,
Weir's no.
Representative Hall,
Yes.
Representative Hughes,
Hughes is a yes.
Senator Lesser,
Yes.
Representative Canino,
No.
Representative Gauthier,
Gauthier, yes.
Representative Mastro Francesco,
No.
Representative Shake.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Our next meeting will be held on Tuesday, January 21st at 11 a.m. in room 2B. At this time, we will recess until 3:30. Thank you all.
Good man. I think I missed.
Senator Lesser, can you hear me all right?
I can. There is a reverb though.
So he hasn't given it.
Sorry about that, Senator Lesser. So. Just a moment, sorry. Okay, there we go, Senator. Sorry, we're still connected up through the room's audio.
All right, so what about?
Senator Lesser and Representative Hall, can you both hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, we're still up through the room, but I'm going to call votes anyway. Agenda item 1, State Marshal's Health Benefits. Representative Hall.
Yes.
Agenda item 2, number of wage and hour investigators at the Labor Department. Representative Hall.
Yes.
Look, just one second. Actually, Senator Carrera, I'm going to take down yours as well right now. So agenda item 1, Senator Carrera, our state marshals.
Yeah, yes on all of them.
Okay, understood.
You all set?
All set. Okay. Agenda
Yes, sir.
item 3, that is act concerning unemployment benefits.
Yes. Yes.
And Senator Lesser.
Yes.
Item 4, clarifying that cannabis workers must be paid the full minimum wage.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 5, making changes to the Connecticut Retirement Security Program statutes.
Yes.
Yes.
Item 6, the protection of warehouse workers in the state.
Yes.
And I already voted. I voted on the rest. Is this
Yes,
one in
you
the
did.
rest?
You're good, Senator Lesser.
Okay, thank you.
And Representative Hall, item 7, an act concerning revisions to the firefighters cancer relief fund.
Yes.
Thank you, Representative, and I have you on the last one, so you're good.
Thank you.